We have to reduce carbon emissions to survive. I feel an urgency to make personal choices based on climate change because the future impacts are so clear. It's time to make demands directed at carbon producers and speak truth to authority. I'm 15 years old and a sophomore in high school. As a senior, I will choose which college I go to, and how that school manages energy use will be a major factor in my decision. For the past decade, college students have demanded that their schools divest funds from fossil fuel companies. They have formed coalitions, lobbied university administrators, and have publicized university investments in carbon-producing companies with the intentions of forcing reallocation of university assets. Divestment is the active process of removing invested assets from specific fiscal areas. The fossil fuel divestment movement started with students not much older than me. Working with the administrators of many colleges and universities, this movement has grown tremendously. Fossil fuel divestment has spread beyond the colleges and universities and into the financial sector. Assuming that fossil fuel companies represent 5% of their endowment portfolios, which is approximately the same as the S&P 500 index, cumulative funds divested from the fossil fuel companies totaled well over $700 billion in 2020. Divestment does not rely on far-fetched technologies or government policies years from being passed. The divestment movement was founded upon the principles of ethical activism, what is truthful, fair, and just for the common good. Divestment is not enough. Divestment does not include the active reinvestment into sustainable industries. And without reallocation into sustainable industries, the warming of our oceans, the melting of our ice caps, and the destruction of biodiversity will continue. Reallocation serves to reinvest the money that has been taken from divested assets and reinvest them into sustainable technologies. Buildings are the largest contributor to carbon output, and colleges and universities support many large buildings on their campuses. Therefore, buildings on college campuses are a feasible instrument for change. In the United States, non-manufacturing-based buildings account for 44.6% of U.S. carbon emissions. There are already certifications such as Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design, or LEED, and RELY, a comprehensive guide for resilient design and construction. Certifications such as LEED and RELY serve to regulate and rate buildings based on their relative carbon efficiencies. The investment into buildings that value sustainable attributes will be a key component in solving the climate crisis. Understanding how divestment capital is deployed and invested can allow for a more impactful reallocation campaign. The movement such as reallocation could shift global investments from peak carbon producing and carbon neutral investments and increase investments in carbon removal sectors of the economy, the net global output of carbon would decrease. Rising global temperatures of almost 1.5 degrees Celsius, which the IPCC projects with current global policies, in the next 80 years will have catastrophic effects on all aspects of life. While divestment cannot prevent permanent climate alteration, it can provide a transition towards net carbon zero. Our change in our carbon emissions is necessary. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, claims that a total investment of 2.5% of the world's economy is needed annually to bring the global emissions to zero by 2065. This will include 420 gigatons of carbon reduction, totaling roughly $14 trillion worth of investment. This will limit the rise of temperatures to only 1.5 degrees Celsius. Completing the necessary investments to keep the existing climate manageable is extremely feasible. So what do these investments look like? The most impactful way in which society can invest its money is towards energy efficiency. Buildings use more form of energy than all forms of transportation combined. We can transition towards energy-efficient buildings that do not produce carbon. Our quest for net carbon zero is within reach. If buildings require a greatly reduced amount of carbon-based electricity, renewable energies will provide the remaining energy needed for transportation and our other energy demands. The task of building energy-efficient buildings requires large amounts of capital that is readily available from the divestment movement. Institutions such as universities have a large amount of capital that can be invested into sustainable and resilient buildings. Many colleges and universities are built on their own power grids and are linked to major power companies. This positions them to build a network of highly energy-efficient buildings that can be powered completely by highly efficient power plants on site. Stanford University produces approximately 160 million kilowatt hours of electricity each year and has plans to become 100% solar powered by 2021. Stanford provides an excellent model for colleges and universities to become energy efficient. Universities that have been divested for years now have a viable place to reinvest. Producing all green energy is not the only way to lower carbon output. Green energy paired with buildings that use electricity results in the lowest possible carbon output. Colleges are leaders in building energy-efficient buildings. The most expensive part of any building is heating and cooling, and LEED and RELY certified buildings are constructed with the intent of saving electricity. Many of these buildings are constructed with operable windows that allow sunlight in to heat the buildings in the winter and prevent heat from entering in the summer, together with super efficient insulators that prevent large amounts of conditioned air from escaping, drastically reduce energy needs. Energy-efficient buildings do not require far-fetched technologies. Although new energy-efficient buildings are being built every day, to retool older buildings to meet energy-efficient standards requires significant investment. With the reallocated funds from the divestment movement, universities, institutions, and cities around the world can actively reinvest in industries that will prevent climate change.